on the coach, or a sweater or a jumper or whatever you need to keep yourselves feeling warm on the coach, because if it's too warm on the coach, there's no alternative for those folks. They just sweat. But if you keep it cool, you can always put on another layer. A couple little notes just on the side, and I'm just going to cover it the way I have these. Sort of these notes are all over. In some areas they're a little bit over, like mine on the margin. But some folks, these are things that they might find they would like. I think the days are getting longer, but sometimes people like to have that little teeny flashlight with them. It helps them in some situations, or at night when you're coming back from eating or something. That's up to you. That's a general travel thing. You don't have to. One thing I would strongly suggest for many of you, at the end of the day, once we get towards the end of the day, I hand around a black whiteboard, a dry erase board, with all the times. I run through it verbally, but I hand that around as well so folks can write down the times and see it. Some of some more visual learners. And I also ask you to try to be careful where you grab it. Because I actually had someone at Yellowstone, we were leaving at 8, and he was having breakfast at 8, and someone said, oh, I just saw them at breakfast. And someone had grabbed it on the 8, and it looked like a 3 to him. He's like, oh, I thought we were leaving at 3. We're going to leave at 3 for a day trip at Yellowstone? So, that's something you just have to be a little careful. You can grab it on the frame, it has like a little margin, and usually there are white areas, unless there's a lot of information. Like today, there's more information, for example. But some folks and you can even grab the stationery from the hotel. But for some folks, it's easier just to write it, and they don't have to worry about it, because every day it changes, and sometimes there are subtle changes. The next question I'm going to answer, and you're getting the long version because we're going to be traveling together for a while. Why, oh why, Evan, do you do things this way? I'll tell you, things change out here. It's a fluid scenario when you travel. Some hotels will not give me the bag pull time until we get there. Some I can call ahead, but things change. Okay, there are some things that are standard, but some of you who know who have worked in different industries, you know once it's written, it's like it's in stone. And to change something is more problematic. So I use this more flexible system to address the changes that you have when you're traveling, okay? So, before you even thought of the question, this is like double jeopardy there, okay? So we have the answer. That's the way I do it. I know sometimes, if you travel certain times a year in certain places, or if I did the same one-week trip over and over again, maybe I could get away with it, but it doesn't work. I do different tours. I don't just run this trip. Although I have back-to-back of these right now, but I don't run them all the time, so. Okay. Okay. I know just from the sampling yesterday, speaking to some folks, that we have multiple tour travelers. And they know how it goes on the road and how this all works. And I also know that we have some folks that probably haven't been on coach tours before. Okay? But for those of you who've been on tours, you probably know that there's one very important thing as we travel. We make our multiple stops during the days, and thank you. And we have plenty to see. We have a wide variety of things to do. This is absolutely vital. Punctuality. We really ask folks to be on time. Not only in the morning, but during our stops. It's very difficult logistically to run the day. Okay? If we're off time all over the place, you may miss things because of that, or you may get in late. And that's one of my favorite things, is when someone comes up to me and says, why are we so late today? And I'm like, and I could say to them, 8, 12, 14, and 7. What are you talking about? Oh, that's how late we were everywhere. So, and I'm sure that the folks that have been on other tours, they may forget those wonderful people from Toledo, Ohio, that they met. They can't remember their names for the lives of them, but they can remember that couple that held the coach up every single stop. Okay? I can have you raise your hands, but you probably have a mental image of someone on a tour. You're like, oh my goodness, I never forget those two people that just made us crazy. And usually, if it gets to be a bit problematic, and you'll know, I just hand you a hotel list. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This is where we'll see you at the end of that day. So, I've had to do it only a couple times, but I don't like to go there. I actually heard one guy at the Grand Canyon do this. I thought it was the funniest. His group. I mean, I hope I don't seem a little too brusque. Maybe I spent too much time in Germany, but it cracks me up. This guy was talking to his group and he says, "Do you know the difference between a tourist and a hitchhiker?" And the guy said, 1 minute. Meaning he was leaving at that time and that was it. But really it just keeps things moving along. And the other thing for me, most important, is a courtesy you extend to your fellow travelers, your fellow guests. Because if you're 1 or 2 people and you're holding up 50 people, the driver and I don't really count, unfortunately. But if you're holding up your group, it's not really kind. It's not a courteous thing to do. A couple of things to pay in mind. I know sometimes we see that 25-cent postcard right at the door and we're like, oh my goodness, I have to get it, I have to get it. I have 3 minutes, I can do it, I can do it. And then that person in front of you has a problem with the credit card and kaplooey. Or the other one, and I'm sorry ladies, it's going to be sexist. You say, I'm going to go to the bathroom at the very last minute, and 2 coaches pull in, and boom, there's a huge line at the ladies. So just, just kind of be a little leery of it. I really appreciate it. It makes things go much, much more smoothly out here. And I know everybody's here for different reasons. You're here to shop, some folks are here for the scenery, some folks want to see the national parks, they hope to see a moose or a grizzly, or we all have different reasons. So that's the other thing. Just remember, people have different reasons to be here. I know at some point, I would guess at some point during the tour, you're going to see your Shangri-La. This is a sort of a sampling, this tour. So we see a lot of places. We spend more time in some, like Yellowstone and other places. You get to take a look. If you see your Shangri-La, by all means, plan a trip for a week and stay some other time, But we do our best to see everything and catch a lot of things out here. A couple of tips. This is the part where you think, jeepers, this is like my mother. I tell folks, stop and gawk. Some folks like to walk and they're looking around, There's uneven pavement, there are tree roots, there's a rock, something, and they fall down and it can cause an awful lot of trouble on a tour, and especially for that individual. So, and I kid you not, at Lake Tahoe, I had 2 ladies fall on the very same rock. And my compassionate transport engineer on that particular trip, what did he say to me? I better not have to write a report on this. Unbelievable. This poor lady had a black eye and cuts, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So, yeah. So stop and gawk. That's my piece of information for that. Same drop-off, same pickup. Unless I explain it, same drop-off, same pickup. Now today, for example, at Harmon's, at the supermarket, to park the coach, but it'll be in the parking lot, so it'll be nearby. But we drop you off somewhere, we're picking you up at the same place. You don't have to ask, okay? Believe me, it will be painfully elaborate when I'm describing where we're going if we're not the same drop-off, same pickup. That keeps it simple, the whole tour, okay? Sometimes, due to safety reasons, we can't stop, or due to time constrictions, we have a schedule, we have somewhere to be. Yellowstone will probably be the best example for this, for the trip. We try to stop, but sometimes there's nowhere to pull off, or there's a ranger waving people through. We just do our best with the situation and try to manage it as best we can, but we have to have safety at the forefront with that in regard. So just bear that in mind. Some of you may have your red-white or your blue-white. We call them A3s. They're basically their itinerary and the optional excursions. I have some copies of them. We'll hand them around in a little bit. But with optional excursions, we try to run them. Some of this are seasonal. So yes, unfortunately, the Snake River is not on yet. They start the last week of May. I'll call and double check today or tomorrow, tonight. But I spoke to someone last night. He said it'd be better to call tomorrow, but it sounds like the last week of May. And there's a reason for that. It's still cold in the mountains. That snow and ice has to melt to make rivers flow. And rivers flow at an efficient pace. Even though it's dam controlled, the Snake River portion that we go on, it's just not enough water to push the boats down. And secondly, it's cold. It's cold in the morning, it's on the water, it's windy, it's open, and for some people it's unpleasant for them. So